dot print x. Save that. And then compile it. And we can rerun it from here. And that looks like that's right. All right, so now that we're getting some of this right, I'm going to start stripping some of these away. So hello world is working, so we can get rid of that. This is working, so we can get rid of that. So, but let's go through these. User Dagenham has 14 tickets. So that was that one, which has our 14 and has our Dagenham. And then we have our new test app created. It prints out the X, which starts as a 1. And then we set it to 17, and we print it again, and it prints out as 17. So there we go. We have the basic functions of any class. You need to be able to have functions that generally speaking, you need functions that get, which is something else we need to do, set and generally access the different variables that are unique to that class. And actually, while we're here, we're going to do another one. Except this one's going to be a private string, and I'm going to put I'm going to call it the username there. Now, because it's private, I can't just come down here and do test app.x. That won't work. But I'm going to create a new function called getX. Which we're going to create here. Public void getX. Oh, no. This isn't void. This is going to be int. Instead of being void, this time it has to be int, because this is going to return the value of x, which means when I call it, it's not going to take any variables. And this is going to be really simple. This is just going to be simply return, oops, if I can spell it right, return x. Now, with getX like this, I can do, let's do another one of these. In fact, let's do this one exactly as it is, except let's do some swaps here. We're going to swap this for z. Take that out. The I know I'm a little disjointed with this. The semicolon is necessary for Java to recognize that any line is complete. If I remove that, it now thinks that this line is being continued on this line, which in this instance isn't what I want, so that stays. But if you have an extremely long line, like if I had to repeat this length here 2 or 3 times, it gets insane. It just really expands out to nowhere. And all I would have to do is continue it on the next line and not include that until I'm done. So here we have a fun note from Princess Rika. Getters and setters are a bit idiomatic to some languages. In Java, people usually expect getX and setX, but in other languages, particular environments or specific cases, it might be more common to just expose X as a public member variable. That's true. If instead of leaving these as private, if you set them to public, you could use .x and you could use the username. And both of those would allow you to, to access them directly and change them directly, and it really depends on the environment that you're working in. Like I could just set these to public and let anybody use them. It's generally a little safer to leave them as private and allow the actual functions of the program to change them. But in the long run, it's sort of the same thing. It depends on the situation, it depends on what you're doing, and it depends on the environment that you're working in. So it is what it is. Alright, I forgot to do this too. We have this new variable. When we instantiate the class, we want this to be set to something. And we're just going to call this Twitch user. That's going to be the string for that. Oh, this must actually shade it. No? It's interesting that it didn't shade this to yellow like it did up here. Wonder if I've done something wrong. Oh, that's what I did wrong. That does not go there. having a semicolon at the end of any line ends it. So if I did that, it would think that I'm just declaring the function now so I can define it later, and it's reserving the name for it, which in this case is not what I want. I want the function to be declared and actually created right here. Okay, and actually let's swap that to username. So now, when I do this, it initiates these variables to this, and then I set x to 17, and then let's do a get for the username. Public, and this is going to be a type string. Get the user name. All right, return the user name. All right, save that. So we're going to use that instead. Test app dot get the username. All right. So I believe that's everything I need to do. No errors. That's always a good sign. There it is. Look at that. We are programming. All right. All right. And just to verify again, test app.get the username returns the username, which is set up here as Twitch user, and get x, which of course is 17, which we can see there. So another note from GetRika, who is better at Java than I am at the moment, that's for sure, and might still be at the end of all this, but the idea with getters and setters is that exposing the variables breaks the separation between the inside of an object and what's going on outside of it, going against the point of having an object in the first place. Others argue that basic getters and setters aren't much different from exposing the member anyway. That is very true. It's GetRika. Including these functions is, in a way, just more work for me, because I could just allow public access to the variable. It depends on the environment. It's I was generally told when I was going through college, it's safer and better practice to actually keep those in functions so that you don't have other things that might overlap with it too. Like, I'm trying to remember some of this too. I remember having some trouble with this back when I was doing threads, but it's been so long. I don't remember what the problem was. I think I declared these as static, which every time I declared the thread meant that it was using the same variable, which of course was not helping anybody. But and Princess Rika says, to clarify, I'm not arguing anything. I just want to play TA and help teach a little, and I appreciate it. I do. Like I said, and I know I say this a lot, but I am incredibly rusty at this, and I don't remember all of it, and so I'm relearning it, and so helping me not stumble around for an entire hour, since we only have an hour that we're doing this at a time, at the moment at least. Anything that helps move this along helps out. Static and threads and thread locality. Yeah. I actually, when I took my multi-threading class, and to people who don't know, threading is like having your program create a separate, smaller program that does something very specific. To answer a question real quick, why am I not programming in Eclipse? Part of the reason is I just kind of felt like trying something else out. I wanted to learn a program while learning the language. I've used Eclipse for a long time, or I had used Eclipse for a long time, and I wanted to try something else new out. And if this didn't work, I would have gone right back to it. This looks like it's going pretty well, though, so far. I mean, we might hit a point where it's not performing as I need it to, and at that point, I will swap over to Eclipse. But for now, I'm actually kind of liking this. It's a bit weird with how it handles Windows, which I'm getting used to, but overall, I'm not hating it. So it's okay. And Both programs are free. If anybody wants to try Eclipse, I recommend that one too. It's also a really good program. Um, but yeah, so to segue back to Threads, um, the example we had, one of the programs we did, is we had to create an FTP program. So what it did is it had a listener that would listen on port, I'm going to embarrass myself, I think it was port 22, might have been port 25. When a connection came in, someone would send an FTP request to that port. It would spawn a thread, and the thread would take that connection, assign it to a new port at a much higher level, like 400 some, and that would leave port 22 open. Now, once that new thread was open, the person that was connected could do whatever they needed to with the program. They could upload files, download files, view files, everything they needed to do with the FTP program. And anybody else that came in and reconnected to port 22 would be given their own thread and their own port. And that allows the program to do more than one thing at once. Now, we're probably not going to have to do anything that spectacular with this, but that is generally how server programs work in terms of FTP and HTTP and all that. Oh man, yep, networks. That's where I picked up some of this. I think this was actually in my multi-threading class, but that was really cool because you had to think in a different way, because you had to create an instance of the like usually you create the program and it runs and one person uses it. And in this, you had to create an instance of the program to run separate so that multiple people could use it at the same time and it could take these connections as it needed to. All right, so I have a question. C# or Java, what's better? To be honest, I don't have any experience with C++. Yes, I do have experience with C++. It's been a while, but I have experience with it. I don't have any experience with C#. So just from my own personal experience, I would have to go with Java, but in all honesty, it depends on what you're trying to do and what the end goal is. The benefit of Java, of course, is that it's very portable. I could compile this code here, and it should, in theory, run the same on my computer, on Windows Server 2003, on Windows 98, and on Unix or Linux. Anything compiled in C#, and again, I could be mistaken, is going to run differently. Well, I'm not entirely mistaken. It's going to run differently on Windows and Linux. In fact, it's probably not going to run on Linux at all because it's a different operating system. So, yeah, like I said, though, I'm not entirely familiar with C#. I haven't used it personally. I know that's part of .NET. I think that was what it was created for, actually, was the .NET Studio. I remember it being mentioned in my object-oriented object-oriented programming class, OOP, as we called it. So let's see, Princess Rika has much better experience with it than I do, apparently, possibly. But she recommends Java over C# because of the portability and lower degree of association with Microsoft and requirement or encouragement to use their other software. I mean, I can't hate Microsoft because their Windows has been more or less my operating system of choice since '95. Or I don't know, I should go back further than that, since DOS. I've been using Microsoft products since DOS. And Windows 3.1.1, those were probably my first two. That said, they do like building interdependencies with their own products. Like, you can't really write C# in anything else other than their studio. And it's not going to really run on anything other than Windows. And it's unfortunate. I mean, you can probably get emulators and things that allow it to run on Linux, but Java allows you to run anywhere because Oracle has allowed it to do so. They've written the programs necessary that once I compile this, which I can just do like that, it runs on anything. Anything that has Java, that is. I mean, I do have to clarify that. But yeah, C# is specific to .NET. Like even C++